Brilliance Audio presents Beautiful Exiles by Meg Waite Clayton, performed by Kirsten Potter. It was a bright, stinking mess of a time, the winter I met Ernest. Dad had been dead a year that Christmas, my 28th, and while Maddie was bearing it, the blue of her eyes was faded, and the gray in her blonde hair suddenly overwhelmed. She hadn't wanted to spend the holiday in St. Louis without Dad. Of course she hadn't. But we were going mad with boredom in Miami, so we set off in the car toward a little seaside town whose name on a tour bus captured our imaginations, Key West. My brother drove, with Maddie beside him and me buffeted in the open window back seat as we crossed the long stretch of bridges to the end of the earth, a place that was delightfully decadent and decaying, with folks content to do nothing but fish for sea turtles and crack coconuts, to gossip and sweat on the worn porches of charmingly colorful white frame houses, and on beaches fishy with the sweetness of the Odyssey, Moby Dick, the little mermaid who can't bring herself to slay the prince to save herself. Surely we can't pass by a place called Sloppy Joe's without a peek inside, can we? Maddie asked. Already we'd climbed the lighthouse for the view and picnicked on the beach, brushed the sand from our toes, piled our sweaty selves back into the car to look for a place where I could wash the wind tangles from my hair in a cooling bath. But I was never one to deny my mother anything, any more than she denied me. Dad? He'd been the denying one. Did we see Hemingway first, or did he see us? People do turn to the light of a door opening in a dark bar, and our pupils were shocked by the contrast from brutal sun and hard road to dim light and soft wood, melted ice dampened floors and bottles of Campari, whiskey, rum. A huge bartender welcomed us from behind a long, curved bar, while at one end of the place patrons returned their attention to a rowdy pool game with money on the rails to make it real. Another man, nearly as large as the bartender, rose with effort from a chaos of papers on the bar. Grubby white t-shirt, dingy white shorts held up by, of all things, a length of rope. He made a surprising racket in the few steps it took to reach us, to add his voice to the bartender's welcome. "Ernest Hemingway," he said. A slow bead of sweat trickled down my spine to settle into the fabric of my black sundress, already damp from all the time pressed to the car seat, and no better for the time on the hot sand. Maddie touched a hand briefly to my shoulder, a reminder to stand up straight and never mind my gawky tallness, as I tried to square the rope belt and the shoeless feet with this man's asymmetric widow's peak that was indeed Ernest Hemingway's. I knew that hairline, and the sad, seductive eyes, too. I'd awoken every morning at Bryn Mawr to those eyes staring down at me from a photo tacked to my dorm room wall. "I'm Edna Gellhorn, and this is my son Alfred," Maddie said to Ernest Hemingway. "And this is Martha." Just Martha. Not my daughter, Martha. You can see how that might have left Hemingway taking my brother and me to be newlyweds fresh off a yacht. But I was lost in thinking, Ernest damn Hemingway, who ought to be out catching an impossibly huge marlin off the coast of Cuba, or shooting some heartbreakingly wild creature in Kenya, or writing from Paris, where, in the years I'd lived there, I'd forever hoped to catch a glimpse of him the way any writer hopes for a glimpse of her literary hero. He and F. Scott Fitzgerald, whose photo I might have hung in place of Hemingway's, if only his looks were as grand as his writing. Nothing ever happens to the brave.